When I bought that quiet lake house, I thought I was finally buying peace. I didn't know I was paying for the silence I'd need after what my own family would do to me. That house wasn't just four walls and a roof to me. It was 40 years of my life compressed into timber and stone. 40 years of getting up before dawn, of working double shifts when others went home to their families, of choosing generic brands and skipping vacations so I could save every penny. Every nail in those walls represented a sacrifice I made, every board a dream I'd deferred. That house was the sum of 40 years of work, long shifts, late nights, back pain, and saving every spare coin. I wasn't rich. I was simply done sacrificing. I was done living for everyone else's tomorrow while my today slipped away, minute by minute, year by year. I'd raised my children. I'd buried my husband. I'd paid my dues to everyone who ever needed something from me. And for once, just once, I wanted something that was completely, utterly mine. You have to understand, I wasn't some wealthy woman buying a vacation home on a whim. Every dollar that went into that house came from somewhere else. I couldn't spend it. New shoes I didn't buy. Dinners out I didn't have. Medical checkups I postponed because the money had to go somewhere more important, toward this dream of a place where I could finally breathe. The lake house wasn't grand. It was small, simple, perfect. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen where I could make coffee and watch the sunrise paint the water gold. It had a dock where I could sit and remember what silence sounded like without the noise of obligations and demands and everyone else's emergencies becoming mine. It was supposed to be my sanctuary, my reward for decades of putting everyone else first. My son, Ethan, had stopped visiting as much. His wife said they were busy. I didn't think much of it until I stopped hearing from them altogether. At first, I told myself it was normal. Young families get consumed by their own lives, their own struggles. I remembered being that age, how the days blurred together in an endless cycle of work and worry, and trying to keep everyone happy. But the silence stretched longer than it should have. Weeks became months. Phone calls went unreturned. Text messages disappeared into the void. When I did manage to reach them, the conversations felt hollow, distracted. Sarah, my daughter-in-law, always had somewhere else to be, some urgent reason why they couldn't talk long or visit. Ethan sounded tired, distant, like he was speaking to me from across a canyon that kept getting wider. I started making excuses for them in my mind. They're building their careers. They're focused on their own family now. They don't need me hovering around, being the needy mother-in-law. I convinced myself that stepping back was the loving thing to do, that giving them space was what a good mother does. I bit my tongue when holidays came and went without invitations. I swallowed my hurt when grandchildren's birthdays happened without me there. The lake house became my refuge from that growing emptiness. Every weekend I could manage, I'd drive the 2 hours north, leaving behind the echo of my too-quiet apartment for the peace of the water. I'd sit on that dock with my coffee and pretend the ache in my chest was just the crisp morning air, not the slow realization that my own family was erasing me from their lives. One Friday, I drove up to the lake without telling anyone. I'd been feeling restless all week, suffocated by the walls of my apartment and the weight of my own thoughts. The weather was perfect, one of those early fall days when the air is clean and sharp and promises relief from everything that's been weighing you down. I didn't call ahead because I didn't think I needed to. It was my house, my sanctuary, the one place on earth that was supposed to be mine, and mine alone. When I turned into the driveway, there were cars parked where mine should have been. 3 cars, actually. One I recognized as Ethan's, but the other 2 were strangers to me. My first thought was that something was wrong. Maybe an emergency, maybe they'd come to find me, and I wasn't there. My heart started racing with that particular panic that comes from thinking you failed someone who needed you. But as I got closer, I could hear laughter. Not the panicked voices of people dealing with a crisis, but genuine, relaxed laughter. The kind you hear at parties, at gatherings, at celebrations. The sound hit me like a physical blow because it told me everything I needed to know before I even stepped out of my car. This wasn't an emergency. This was intentional. I opened my own door and walked into a stranger's home. That's what it felt like in that first, disorienting moment. Nothing was where I'd left it. My pictures, the ones of Ethan as a baby, of my late husband, of family moments I'd treasured, they were gone, replaced with photos I didn't recognize, moments I hadn't been part of. My furniture had been moved around, rearranged like I was a tenant who'd left and someone else had moved in to make the space their own. My daughter-in-law was in my robe. My robe. The soft blue terry cloth one I'd bought specifically for those peaceful lake mornings. She was standing in my kitchen, cooking in my pans, comfortable and relaxed like she owned the place. Like I was the intruder in my own sanctuary. The sight of her in that robe did something to me that I still can't fully explain. It wasn't just anger, it was deeper than that. It was the feeling of being erased, of watching someone else live in the space you'd created for your own healing. It was seeing your most private sanctuary treated like a hotel, your personal belongings used like amenities left for the next guest. She didn't even look surprised when she saw me. Just annoyed. Inconvenienced. Like I was a pest who'd shown up at the wrong time and ruined her fun. The audacity of that expression, the sheer nerve of being irritated with me for arriving at my own house, it took my breath away. "You can't just show up unannounced," she said. "Not hello. Not, we should have asked. Not even a hint of embarrassment or guilt. Just irritation at my presence in my own space." And then, she called me a trespasser. A trespasser. In the house I'd bought with my own money, my own sacrifice, my own 40 years of delayed dreams. That word hit me like a slap. Trespasser. As if I was some stranger who'd wandered onto property that didn't belong to me. As if the deed in my name meant nothing. As if 4 decades of my life meant nothing. As if I meant nothing. I could feel something shifting inside me in that moment. Not rage, not yet. Something colder and more permanent than rage. Something that felt like a door closing, like a bridge burning, like a line being drawn that could never be uncrossed. Because when someone looks you in the eye and tells you that you don't belong in your own space, in your own life, they're telling you exactly how they see you. And once you hear that truth, you can never unhear it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't scream or throw things or demand explanations. I simply said, "If I'm trespassing, call the police." And then I sat down right in my chair. The one chair I'd specifically bought for those morning coffees on the deck. The one piece of furniture I'd chosen purely for my own comfort. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the wheels turning in Sarah's head, the sudden realization that maybe, just maybe, she'd overplayed her hand. Ethan appeared from somewhere deeper in the house, looking like a child caught with his hand in the cookie jar. The friends, or whoever they were, suddenly found reasons to look anywhere but at me. But I didn't move. I sat in my chair, in my house, on my property, and waited. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is exactly what you have every right to do. Sometimes the most devastating response to someone's disrespect is to simply exist in your own space and let them figure out how wrong they are. When the police arrived, she started performing her little play. Oh, she was good, I'll give her that. Suddenly, she was the victim, the poor young mother just trying to enjoy a peaceful weekend with family. I was the crazy old woman making trouble, the difficult mother-in-law causing drama. She painted herself as reasonable and me as unhinged, all wide eyes and bewildered innocence. But I had something she didn't, the truth on paper. The deed with my name on it. The mortgage documents showing my payments. The insurance paperwork, the property tax records, every single piece of documentation that proved what she was trying to deny. I'd brought my folder of important documents because I'd planned to do some financial planning during my quiet weekend. I never imagined I'd need them to prove my right to exist in my own house. The look on her face when I pulled out that deed, that was the moment everything changed. The moment her performance cracked and the truth came spilling out like water from a broken dam. The police officer's expression shifted from polite patience with a family dispute to professional attention to what was clearly a more serious situation. And Sarah just deflated. All that righteous indignation, all that victim posturing, it just evaporated when faced with legal documentation. But I didn't stop at proving ownership. I didn't stop at the quiet satisfaction of watching her realize how catastrophically she'd miscalculated. Because in that moment, Sitting in my chair with my deed in my hand, I made a decision that had been building for months, without my even realizing it. I opened the folder I'd kept for years. Bank transfers, bills, favors, all for them. Every loan I'd given that had never been repaid. Every bill I'd helped with. Every crisis I'd solved with my checkbook and my sacrifice. And then I stopped every single one of them. Not in anger, in clarity. In the clear-eyed recognition that I had been enabling my own erasure, funding my own irrelevance, paying for the privilege of being taken for granted. The automatic transfers to help with their mortgage, canceled. The credit card I'd given them for emergencies that had become their regular grocery fund, canceled. The college fund I'd been building for their children, frozen. I didn't do it to punish them. I did it to save myself. Because somewhere in the fog of hurt and betrayal, I could see the pattern clearly for the first time. I wasn't their mother or grandmother. I was their ATM. I wasn't family. I was a resource to be managed, a problem to be solved when convenient, a wallet to be accessed when needed. That day, I blocked their numbers. Not out of anger, out of clarity. Because peace doesn't live where disrespect does. Because love can't survive in soil that's been poisoned by entitlement and contempt. Because I finally understood that saying no isn't cruel, it's the only way to save what's left of yourself when everyone else is taking pieces. The drive home that day was the loneliest 2 hours of my life. But it was also the freest I'd felt in years. Like I'd been holding my breath for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe normally, and suddenly my lungs remembered how to fill completely. The silence in my car wasn't empty. It was clean. It was mine. Weeks later, the calls started, first from my son, then her parents. Lost jobs. Missed payments. Fear. The safety net I'd been had vanished, and suddenly they were learning to stand on their own. Or trying to, anyway. The mortgage they couldn't quite afford without my help. The lifestyle they'd built on the foundation of my generosity. The assumption that I would always be there, always available, always willing to sacrifice my own security for their comfort. I listened to those voicemails once, just once each. Ethan's voice cracking as he tried to explain, to apologize, to ask for another chance. Sarah's parents, people I'd barely met, telling me I was destroying their daughter's family. Friends and relatives who'd never shown much interest in my life suddenly very concerned about my cruel behavior toward my sweet daughter-in-law. The irony wasn't lost on me. When I was sacrificing for them, I was invisible. When I stopped, I was suddenly the most important person in their world. When I was giving, I was taken for granted. When I stopped, I was painted as the villain in their story. But I'd learned something crucial in those weeks of silence. Other people's emergencies don't automatically become your obligations. Other people's poor planning doesn't become your problem to solve. And slowly, so slowly, I almost didn't notice at first, something interesting started to happen. Without the constant drain of their financial crises, without the emotional exhaustion of always being needed but never valued, I started to remember who I was before I became their solution to everything. I started sleeping better, eating better. I took a painting class, something I'd wanted to do for years but never had time for because someone always needed something. I started saying yes to invitations I'd been declining because I was always saving money for their next emergency. I bought myself the good coffee, the soft sheets, the books I'd been wanting to read. Small things, but they added up to something larger. The recognition that I was worthy of my own care, my own resources, my own attention. The lake house became what it was always supposed to be, a sanctuary. Not a secret hideaway from family obligations, but a place of genuine peace. I painted the bedroom a soft yellow that made me happy. I bought wind chimes for the porch. I learned the names of the birds that came to the feeder I installed. I became a regular at the local diner, where the waitress knew my order, and the owner always had a smile for me. Months passed before I heard her voice again. No pride left, just honesty. "You were right," she said when I finally answered one of her calls. "We never saw you as a person, only as help. I don't know when it started or how it got so bad, but you were right." Those words should have felt like victory, like vindication. But mostly they just felt sad. Sad for all the time we'd lost, all the relationship we'd destroyed, All the love that had been buried under layers of expectation and entitlement. Sad for my son, caught between his mother and his wife, never learning to stand up for what was right. Sad for their children, who were learning that family means taking from the people who love you until there's nothing left to take. But I was also proud of her for saying it. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong, especially when your wrongness has cost you so much. It takes humility to call someone you've treated poorly and acknowledge their truth. It was the first real conversation we'd had in years, maybe ever. The first time she'd spoken to me like I was a human being with feelings and dignity instead of just a resource to be managed.
I didn't forgive them that day.
Forgiveness isn't a button you push when someone apologizes correctly. It's proof repeated over time. It's the slow rebuilding of trust through consistent action, not just pretty words. It's earned through changed behavior, not just acknowledged mistakes. But I did something else. I wished them well and kept my peace. Because forgiveness is for my benefit, not theirs. Because carrying anger is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. Because the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And I had worked too hard for my peace to let their chaos back into my life. The truth is, I might forgive them someday. If they show me, through their actions over time, that they've really learned something from this experience. If they demonstrate that they understand the difference between loving someone and using someone. If they prove that they value relationship over transaction, connection over convenience. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back to the way things were. It doesn't mean opening my wallet or my boundaries or my heart to the same patterns that nearly destroyed me. It means releasing the anger while keeping the wisdom. It means hoping for their growth while protecting my own peace. Some days I miss them so much it feels like a physical ache. I miss the grandchildren, miss the family dinners, miss the illusion of being needed and wanted. But then I remember how it felt to be treated like a trespasser in my own house, to have my robe worn by someone who saw me as an inconvenience, to be called names for existing in my own space. And I remember that missing someone and being willing to be mistreated by them are two different things. That love without respect isn't love. It's a slow way of disappearing. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away and let people figure out how to value what they had. I used to think saying yes made me a good mother. I thought sacrifice was love, that giving until it hurt proved how much I cared. I thought being needed was the same as being loved, that solving everyone's problems made me valuable, that my worth was measured by my usefulness to others. Turns out, saying no saved what was left of me. It saved my sanity, my dignity, my financial security, my sense of self. It drew a line between what I was willing to give and what I required in return. It taught me the difference between generosity and enabling, between love and codependency, between being helpful and being used. The lake house still sits quiet on the water, exactly as it should be. I still make my coffee there every weekend, still watch the sunrise paint the water gold. But now the silence is pure. It's not hiding from anything or running from anyone. It's just peace, the kind you can only find when you stop trying to buy love with sacrifice and start believing you're worthy of respect just for being who you are. Love without respect isn't love. It's a slow way of disappearing. And I spent 40 years slowly disappearing, one sacrifice at a time, one boundary crossed at a time, one piece of myself given away until I almost forgot there was anything left to save. But there was. There always is. And sometimes the most radical act of love for yourself and even for the people who are hurting you is to stop, to say no, to walk away, to choose your own peace over their comfort, to save yourself before there's nothing left to save. That's what I learned in my quiet lake house. That's what I bought with 40 years of sacrifice and what I paid for with the silence I needed after my own family broke my heart. But hearts, I've learned, are resilient things. They can break and heal, love and protect, forgive and remember all at the same time. And mine is finally, completely, peacefully mine.